Investigators say Rolling 30s gang members DeMonte Mack, Trayvon Casey, and the gang's leader Sean Guerrant will spend up to 4 decades in federal prison.
That's 34-year-old Brandon Winnegan, who was sentenced to life in prison yesterday. He was charged with a handful of crimes, including aggravated malicious wounding, child neglect, and doing a criminal act for a gang.
This morning, a gang leader for sex trafficking will spend 32 years behind bars. Court documents say a 16-year-old girl was targeted by Pierre Smith in April of 2020.
Explore the untold stories and deep dive into the complex world of gang culture. Today, we're taking you inside the lives of some of Virginia's most notorious gang leaders. From Brandon Sayso Winnegan and the Rolling 20s Bloods to Shadonta Beane and the Mary Point Boys, we'll uncover how these individuals shaped their territories, orchestrated violent acts, and ultimately faced the consequences of their choices. Stay tuned as we navigate the intense realities of gang leadership, crime, and the heavy hand of justice in Virginia.
The last of 10 Hampton Roads gang members was sentenced to prison after pleading guilty to a vicious gang attack that happened 3 years ago.
Those individuals were accused of leaving a 20-year-old woman for and putting her then 2-year-old in danger.
The last of her offenders was sentenced to prison. And that's 34-year-old Brandon Winnegan, who was sentenced to life in prison yesterday. He was charged with a handful of crimes, including aggravated malicious wounding, child neglect, and doing a criminal act for a
gang members involved in the April 2020 attack and maiming of a 21-year-old Norfolk mother who wanted to leave the gang are heading to prison.
We hear a lot of talk about gangs. This was a real gang.
This is Norfolk Commonwealth attorney Ramin Fadahi.
That engaged in one of the most brutal and violent attacks that I have encountered in my career.
The hours-long mob attack involved the woman being beat.
The Rolling 20s Neighborhood Bloods are a predominantly African-American street gang based in the West Adams area on the west side of South Los Angeles, California. Established in the 1970s, they are among the largest blood gangs in South Los Angeles. The territory spans from Vermont Avenue to Arlington Avenue, bordered by Jefferson Boulevard and Pico Boulevard. Although primarily African-American, the gang has historically included a substantial number of Belizean members, with some Mexican-American involvement, particularly during the 1980s and 1990s. According to recently released court documents, local members of the Rolling 20s Outlaw Bloods, a set of a larger national gang, were involved in an attempted deletion of a woman after she was recruited. Documents identify Brandon Sayso Winnegan as the leader of the local group, with Portia Lawless Hodges as the highest-ranking female member. A stipulation of facts filed Tuesday in Norfolk Circuit Court details that Arrington was jumped in or physically assaulted by female gang members as part of her initiation. In the days that followed, she received multiple violent punishments for failing to correctly recite gang information or obey orders. On April 23, 2020, Arrington went to one of the gang's main meeting spots on Glen Myrtle Avenue for a planned movie night with her 2-year-old son. After another punishment from female gang members, the victim told Winnegan she wanted out. This angered the gang members, who then assaulted her further. Hodges allegedly insisted that the victim should be deleted because she knew too much. When the victim tried to leave, Deandra Watkins reportedly dragged her from her car and back into the apartment. Inside, gang members attacked the victim until she lost consciousness. While the attack was ongoing, Hodges and other members took the victim's phone to delete incriminating evidence, including social media accounts and gang-related information. Later, Tavares, Flash, Mitchell, and Watkins reportedly loaded the victim into her own car, driving her a few blocks away, where she was left in the driver's seat after being shot multiple times, including a bullet wound that started near her eye. The victim was eventually found by a concerned neighbor, her face swollen beyond recognition. Her son was later dropped off unharmed in Westgate and was placed in foster care due to his exposure to the traumatic events. 10 individuals were arrested in connection with the attack on the victim. On December 19, Brandon Winnegan, age 34, received a life sentence plus 38 years after pleading guilty to several charges, including aggravated malicious wounding, child neglect, and gang-related criminal activity. The leader of a street gang operating in Virginia's rural northern neck, Shadonta Beane, 26, has been sentenced to 10 years in federal prison after selling a firearm to a federal informant. Beane, who pled guilty to possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, also faces local charges related to a shooting at a Raceway gas station in Tappahannock. According to an agreed-upon statement of facts in his plea deal, Beane negotiated the sale of a submachine gun equipped with a 50-round drum magazine, through multiple messages with an FBI informant in September 2020. On October 1, 2020, Beane exchanged the gun for $1,400 in cash, unaware that the transaction had been documented by the FBI. 2 days later, on October 3, Beane's aunt reported the firearm missing to the police, not knowing the weapon was already in FBI custody. She was the original buyer of the gun and informed the police that it had been taken from her vehicle. When asked by law enforcement for the serial number, she reached out to Beane, who then contacted the FBI informant for the information, inadvertently further implicating himself and his aunt in the illegal sale. Beane had previously been identified by local prosecutors as a leader of the Mary Point Boys, a gang accused of terrorizing the community. Despite this, federal agents did not arrest Beane immediately. The Lancaster County Sheriff's Office briefly detained him on October 12, 2020, for providing false identification to an officer and driving without a license, but he was soon released without federal charges. Later that month, on October 31, 2020, Beane was reportedly involved in a shooting at the Raceway gas station in Tappahannock. He wasn't taken into federal custody until November 19, 2020, when he was charged with firearm possession as a felon, leading to his eventual 10-year sentence.
New this morning, a gang leader for sex trafficking will spend 32 years behind bars. Court documents say a 16-year-old girl was targeted by Pierre Smith in April of 2022. Smith met her and took explicit photos of her.
A Portsmouth leader of the Imperial Gangster Bloods has been sentenced to 32 years in prison on charges related to trafficking and exploitation, according to the Department of Justice. Pierre De Romeo Smith, 40, of Portsmouth, received this sentence for trafficking a minor, creating illicit materials, intending to distribute controlled substances, and unlawful firearm possession. According to court records and trial evidence, Smith initially met the minor on April 30, 2022, and took exploitative photos of her. For the next 3 weeks, Smith arranged numerous meetings for the individual across the Hampton Roads area, scheduling up to 30 appointments a night, according to DOJ records. He reportedly supplied substances to keep her alert and retained the proceeds from these encounters. In May 2022, the Virginia Beach Police Department, during an undercover operation at a hotel, intercepted and arrested Smith in the hotel parking garage after he contacted the victim. Officers discovered controlled substances and a Glock handgun in Smith's vehicle, despite his status as a convicted felon prohibiting firearm possession. Following his arrest, the DOJ reports that Smith greenlit the individual, allegedly approving an order to harm her. The victim informed authorities of this order, which was corroborated by 2 separate confidential sources. Smith allegedly issued the order to prevent the individual from testifying against him, according to DOJ sources. He was ultimately convicted by a federal jury on April 6, 2023.
A safer place today because of the conviction of 3 Rollin' 30s gang members, including the gang leader, all who will spend an upward of 40 years behind bars. Investigators say Rollin' 30s gang members DeMonte Mack, Trayvon Casey, and the gang's leader Sean Guerrant will spend up to 4 decades in federal prison. The 3 men are responsible for of 17-year-old Nicholas Lee in 2017 and Markel Gertie in 2018.
The Rollin' 30s original Harlem Crips, also known as the Dirt Gang, are an active African-American multi-generational street gang located on the west side around the Jefferson Park region of South Los Angeles, California. Their history dates back as far as the 1960s, making them one of the longest-standing Crip neighborhood in Los Angeles, which runs from Jefferson Boulevard to Martin Luther King Boulevard, between Crenshaw Boulevard and Normandy Ave. Sean Denzel Guerrant, also known as Harlem Dank, age 31, pleaded guilty in November 2021 to racketeering conspiracy and conspiracy to commit a deletion. Guerrant was sentenced to 37 years in federal prison. Roanoke Police Chief Sam Roman called the case a long and difficult process and noted the personal impact on many in law enforcement and the community. While we cannot bring back the young man who met his demise, this outcome hopefully provides some peace to his loved ones. We hope this sends a clear message to those perpetuating violence in our community. Guerrant, Casey, Levacy, and Mack were members of the Rollin' 30s Crips, also known as the Dirt Gang, a national street gang active in cities across the U.S. The Roanoke set operated mainly in northwest Roanoke, particularly around the Lansdowne neighborhood. Guerrant admitted that he, along with Casey, Mack, Levacy, and others, had conspired in violent criminal activity as part of a pattern of racketeering. Guerrant ordered the demise of a 17-year-old gang member after the gang member had attempted to warn a targeted individual and helped him evade harm. The gang member's warning allowed the person to escape, but ultimately led to the gang member demise when Casey and Mac chased and fatally shot him. In a separate incident 8 months later, on February 9, 2018, Casey arranged to meet with Marco Guerrant. When Guerrant arrived, Casey shot him in the chest, stole his belongings, and fled. Although Guerrant managed to drive away, he later met his demise from the gunshot wound. Thanks for watching this deep dive into Virginia's gang leadership and the extreme measures they took to maintain power. From life sentences to gang crackdowns, these stories highlight the relentless grip of law enforcement and the community's determination to end violent crime. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated on our latest content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts and let us know what other stories you'd like to see covered. Until next time, stay safe and stay informed.